Jack, do you know what time it is?
It's game time. Y'all ready for this? Oh no, they were ready for that.
February 7th, 2014, a day that changed the film industry forever. Okay, maybe that was a bit hyperbolic, but it sure was an awesome day for LEGO and film fans alike. On this day, a decade ago, gosh, I'm old, the LEGO Movie was released to critical, commercial, and fan acclaim. Fast forward 10 years later, and the film has clearly made a big impact on pop culture and consumerism. However, things weren't always as peachy for this flick as it may seem. Let's take a look back on the history of the LEGO Movie and its impact on LEGO and cinema as a whole. Whenever I tell people I love the LEGO Movie, they usually scoff. It's pretty obvious by my channel that I'm obsessed with LEGO, but you might not realize I'm also a major film nut. I have a degree in film and I currently work in the entertainment industry. Movies are my biggest passion that aren't small plastic bricks. So when I tell people how much I adore this motion picture, everyone always laughs it off. They are like, well, of course you love the LEGO Movie, Lee. And to their credit, this film is a combination of my two biggest hobbies. I'm definitely predisposed to loving it. However, I'm also a movie critic, and I was just as cynical as the next mustache swirler out there going into this film. To say my expectations for the LEGO Movie were low would be an understatement. Turning a massive brand into a major motion picture just sounds like the most shameless cash grab a studio can possibly imagine. Preying on people's nostalgia for a quick buck with a recognizable IP is as low as it gets. Additionally, when the LEGO Movie was announced, my mind immediately went to the LEGO movies we had before 2014. These are titles such as the 4 Bionicle movies and more notably, The Adventures of Clutch Powers.
Clutch Powers.
The Clutch Powers?
The latter is a complete joke of a film that resorts to the lowest common denominator of humor out there. Clutch Powers was marketed as the quote-unquote first LEGO movie on DVD, and I wrongfully assumed we'd be getting a film similar to that one with a bit of a bigger budget, especially with the animation style. More on that in a bit. But boy, was I wrong. The LEGO Movie began development all the way back in 2008, but the film was stuck in production hell for a few years. In 2010, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs directors Phil Lord and Christopher Miller were officially flagged to helm the project. Here in 2024, the names Lord and Miller have a certain amount of gravitas in the film industry. They are behind tons of great projects, including the 21 Jump Street movies, the Mitchells vs. the Machines, and most notably, the Spider-Verse films. Lord and Miller are one of Hollywood's premier duos. They're like LeBron James and Dwayne Wade. And anytime their names are attached to a project, fans get very excited. You might even know them for kinda directing Solo, a Star Wars story, but they were infamously fired midway through production and replaced with veteran filmmaker Ron Howard. Needless to say, Lord and Miller are somewhat of a powerhouse, a dynasty team, if you will. That wasn't true in 2010. Now, don't get me wrong, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs is a fun film, and getting the guys who directed that romp seemed like a logical choice for a PG animated picture, but their names didn't ring the same amount of confidence in 2010 as they do in modern day. It just so happens that Warner Brothers struck gold when they hired the two for the LEGO Movie. WB officially greenlit production in 2011 with an early 2014 release date in mind. A year later, Lord and Miller announced the working title for the film, LEGO: The Piece of Resistance. That was obviously changed to the LEGO Movie soon after, and in 2012, members of the cast, including Chris Pratt, Elizabeth Banks, and Will Ferrell, began to be announced. The first teaser trailer for the LEGO Movie dropped on June 18th, 2013. Nearly 11 years later, the trailer admittedly feels very dated. It uses the pop song Feel This Moment by Pitbull, which I don't think has been played anywhere since 2013. It also has a lot, and I mean a lot, of text graphics on the screen, a trailer trope that has thankfully died down. However, credit where credit is due, the trailer did up my excitement level when it was released solely based on the quality of the animation. I'll discuss this later in the video, but my fears of this flick looking like Clutch Powers were immediately extinguished, which is good. With that being said, I remember not being very impressed with the humor in the trailer. They handpicked a few jokes from the film that I would describe as safe or basic, especially Emmett's reaction to seeing Wild Style for the first time. While not necessarily cringe, these jokes didn't inspire any confidence in me. The main trailer was released on Halloween later that same year, and it's a noticeable improvement. They give you a basic idea of the story but don't spoil any of the good stuff, and the joke selection here is way better. I particularly love the Abraham Lincoln quote,
"A house divided against itself would be better than this."
As someone who grew up in a history-obsessed family, that joke really hit hard. The trailer still manages to date itself with more cheesy on-screen text and the same Pitbull song, but overall it got my hype levels for the film higher. Needless to say, I was starting to drink the Kool-Aid. That Kool-Aid got even sweeter for me as the tie-in LEGO sets were beginning to be revealed and subsequently released. The first wave of the LEGO Movie sets came out on January 1st, 2014, and I remember buying a big haul of them at the LEGO store in Nashville, Tennessee opening day while visiting my relatives. I had zero context for the wackiness of these sets, and I won't spend too much time on them because this video is more about the film itself, but highlights for me included set number 70803, Cloud Cuckoo Palace, 70807, Metal Beards Duel, 70808, Super Cycle Chase, and 70809, Lord Business's Evil Lair. All these components started coming together to get me excited for the LEGO Movie, but my optimism was still incredibly cautious. Fast forward a few weeks and opening weekend was finally here. The official release date for the LEGO Movie was 2/7/2014. However, movie theaters were starting to transition into the Thursday preview screenings we now know today, and the first showing of this flick at my local cinema was at 10 p.m. the night before. I remember I had just gotten my after 9 p.m. driver's license and got permission to drive to the theater that late from my parents. I'm not sure if it's the same in your state, but in North Carolina you can't drive after 9 p.m. for the first 6 months of having your license. Not that I was cool in going out that late anyway, but I finally got my after 9 p.m. in December 2013, and going to the late premiere of the LEGO Movie was my first big outing alone after hours. I remember specifically I was the only person in the entire auditorium. Perhaps that shouldn't be surprising given it was a school night in February for a PG-rated animated film, but it made me nervous nobody cared about this picture. I didn't mind the emptiness of the theater though, because I got to sit back, relax, and have an absolute ball watching the film, and that I did. I remember not holding back any of my reactions, including literally leaping out of my seat during the scene when the Millennium Falcon showed up. It was like watching my team win the Super Bowl, except in a very public place. I honestly had an out-of-body euphoric experience watching the LEGO Movie for the first time. I was completely blown away. It also turns out my fears about nobody wanting to see this movie were unwarranted. The opening day gross was around 17 million, a respectable number. However, word of mouth must have exploded, and with school out on Saturday, the movie jumped 80% and grossed a whopping 30 million in its second day. Even Sunday outgrossed Friday, with a fabulous addition of another 21 million. This all added up to an opening weekend total of nearly 70 million, close to double what some box office experts were predicting for the film. Adjusted for inflation, that's closer to about 90 million in today's dollars, meaning the LEGO Movie had a more successful opening weekend than films like Oppenheimer or Black Widow. I personally saw the movie twice on opening weekend. The first I already mentioned, but I went with my parents on Saturday, but to our chagrin, the theater was entirely sold out, something that almost never happened at our local multiplex. We bought tickets then for a showing the next day and saw it on Sunday. Ironic that in 2 short days, I went from being in a completely empty screening to not even being able to get a ticket for one. Needless to say, the LEGO Movie was a smash hit, grossing almost $500 million worldwide and spawning 3 sequels/spin-offs. Movies we might discuss in a later video. At the end of the day, none of this matters if the film ain't good to me personally, so it's finally time to break down my thoughts on the art. I'll begin by talking about the cast, one of the best I've ever seen for an animated production. I decided to divide the cast into 2 parts. One is like an all-star team of actors from iconic sitcoms, and the other is just a plethora of A-list celebrities. Firstly, Chris Pratt as Emmett, who was still filming Parks and Recreation at the time, where he plays Andy Dwyer. Also from Parks and Rec, Nick Offerman, aka Ron Swanson, is in the film playing Metalbeard. You then have Charlie Day of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia fame voicing Benny, the 1980-something spaceman. Alison Brie, aka Annie from Community, is the voice of Unikitty. Will Arnett iconically voices Batman. While it feels like Arnett is in everything and might transcend into the A-list celebrity group of actors, he also has a major role in Arrested Development, so I threw him in here. Other actors with small parts include Jake Johnson, who plays Nick Miller in New Girl.
He likes sausage. That's something. Gail is perky. That's something.
And Colby Smulders as Wonder Woman, who you probably know as Robin from How I Met Your Mother or as Maria Hill from the Avengers movies. It really does feel like a dream team of actors from situational comedies in the 2000s, but the rest of the cast is equally as ridiculous. Headliners include Elizabeth Banks, whose raspy voice is perfect for this edgy goth girl-like character. Comedy legend Will Ferrell as the main villain, President Business. Will also appears in the film as an actual human, something we'll discuss later on. Morgan freaking Freeman basically plays Dumbledore or Gandalf in the film with the character Vitruvius. It's amazing to hear that beloved voice get lost in a comedic role. Liam Neeson has a dual part as good cop/bad cop. His bad cop is just taken Liam Neeson, but he really shines as good cop. Hearing Liam talk with such a high-pitched voice blows my mind to this day.
Oh yes, but we're not done yet.
Hi, buddy. I'm your friendly neighborhood police officer. Would you like a glass of water?
Yeah, actually.
Too bad.
And finally, Lord and Miller re-teamed with their 21 Jump Street stars, Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill, who hilariously voiced Superman and Green Lantern in the film.
You out of there.
Don't!
Ah! Oh my gosh, my hands are stuck. My legs are stuck as well.
I super hate you.
The ongoing bit about Green Lantern being an absolute joke is hilarious, especially in 2014 when we were less than 3 years removed from that horrible Ryan Reynolds version of the character. Overall, the ensemble cast here is spectacular. I have 0 complaints, no notes, they nailed it. However, of course, a good cast does not make a movie great. Thankfully, that is not the case here. If you prefer more downtime and a slower pace for your comedy, this flick might not work for you, but it's very much on brand for my tastes. After this opening scene, we are introduced to our main world and our main character. Emmett, voiced of course by Chris Pratt, is the most basic of LEGO figures. The decision to make the main character a LEGO fig with the basic brown hair and a plain smiley face was brilliant, especially when you know your LEGO figure history. Emmett lives in a 1984-esque society that's brainwashed by politics and the media. Sadly, that doesn't feel all that unrealistic 10 years later, but I won't get into that here. They really set up all of this effortlessly in a funny way, but also meaningful. The most memorable part here is obviously the Oscar-nominated song, Everything is Awesome.
Everything is awesome.
At first, I kind of hated this song, but it's so annoyingly catchy and synonymous with this movie that I now kind of love it. The radio station playing it to death is a bit that really works for my Scroogey attitude towards modern pop music. They really did think about every detail in this film. The plot kicks into high gear when the character Wildstyle is introduced. Emmett stumbles upon the piece of resistance, another spectacular pun, and sets our plot in motion. Side note, the strange inclusion of real-life objects and the way they are mispronounced is one of my favorite running gags throughout this entire film.
Nobody knows where this stuff comes from. This one is the Cloak of Bandaid. I hear it's super painful to take off. You want to try it on?
I especially love the polish remover of Niall that always gets me. Now, Emmett, of course, is the Chosen One, a plot device common in some of the biggest IPs known to man. Star Wars has one, Harry Potter has one, etc. We all know Chosen One plots, but the LEGO movie truly subverts that and gives us the most useless messiah ever. But even more importantly, it plays into the message of the film that I'll touch on in a few minutes. We then proceed to have Emmett thrown into a crazy multiverse of different LEGO brands and IPs, Cloud Cuckoo Land, the awesomely named Middle Zealand, etc. It's kind of like a hero's journey mixed with an acid trip. I adore just how willing they were to get really, and I mean really weird here. The crew starts to assemble once they go to Cloud Cuckoo Land, and we're introduced to all sorts of wacky characters. Alison Brie's Unikitty and Will Arnett's Batman are two standouts to me, and I love how their styles clash. However, the most memorable character is obviously Charlie Day as Benny the Spaceman. His constant desire to build a spaceship is great, and I literally cannot see that word without quoting him. It's like permanently ingrained in my mind. I also need to highlight the council scene of the Master Builders here. I already talked about the Abe Lincoln joke, but this whole sequence is pure gold. One of my favorite jokes in this entire film, which was the intro for this video, is when Shaquille O'Neal, actually voiced by the real Shaq, does this.
Y'all ready for this? Oh no, they were ready for that.
This sort of humor is why the movie is so flipping funny to me. It's entirely random, but also really well thought out. There's no way to properly describe it besides just brilliant. It's just fantastic comedy. The pacing of this movie is also A1. It truly never lets up. This is something I can't say for the other entries in this franchise. Both LEGO Batman and the LEGO Movie 2 have some weak second acts if you ask me, but the LEGO Movie never dips in quality. In fact, some of the best moments are in this middle chapter. All of the stuff on Metalbeard Sea Cow is fantastic, including the Star Wars cameo I didn't think would ever happen. I didn't think WB would reference one of their biggest rivals in a million years, but they were able to get the job done. Bravo! The joke is also hysterical, and the fact that Billy D. Williams and Anthony Daniels reprised their iconic roles is just so good.
On, Ham. This might be the right galaxy after all, because I see a heavenly body.
After this moment, we start to transition into the film's third act, by far the most bold segment of the entire story. Now, the LEGO Movie never played it safe. They could have, but they didn't. Nothing was traditional about this film, but the third act goes in a shocking direction. Emmett ends up in the real world, with an extended live action sequence in a basement. This was never teased in the trailers, never officially announced, nobody had a clue this was going to happen, and Will Ferrell was featured as a physical actor. We learned that the whole movie we just watched is a kid's imagination, sort of, while playing with his dad's LEGO collection. It's very interesting and parallels the hero/villain story of Emmett and Lord Business. The third act works here because of its emotion. Emmett's speech to Lord Business about being special is absolutely wonderful and choked me up when I originally saw the film.
That guy. You are the most talented, most interesting, and most extraordinary person in the universe. And you are capable of amazing things because you are the special.
You see, when this movie came out, I was a junior in high school that was considered a pretty big nerd at the time. I loved Lego, I loved movies, I loved Star Wars, etc. And while some nerdy stuff was starting to get popular like the Avengers, it wasn't nearly as mainstream as it is today. The message of this movie really spoke to me at the time. I frankly found it beautiful. I was only 16 years old, but I'm sure if I were younger, it would have set me up better for high school and more content if I had watched it as a kid. It's really just beautiful stuff, and it showcases the tremendous amount of heart this film contains. The movie concludes in a happy way as you'd expect, and everything truly is awesome. Additionally, the ending joke with the Duplo brick showing up is pretty hilarious and a great way to send off this movie. Even the credits of the film are creative and fun, and you really get to hear everything is awesome in its true form, including the Lonely Island's rap segment, a highlight of the song. Overall, the story of the Lego Movie is pretty much perfect. The pacing, humor, characters, message, it all works so seamlessly. Lord & Miller really devised a masterpiece here. However, I purposely saved one of the best aspects of the film for last, and that's the animation. I mentioned earlier how much I despise the animation of The Adventures of Clutch Powers. That movie has Lego figures, but they don't really feel like genuine Lego. Also, the environments are just PlayStation 2 cutscenes, hideously rendered. Now, I would have loved to have seen the Lego Movie actually be stop motion. How cool would that have been? Some YouTubers at the time had made some incredible brick films, including Forest Fire 101 and Brotherhood Workshop. But stop motion is very time consuming, and I'm guessing WB didn't have the patience for that, but they did the next best thing. The Lego Movie is ultimately CGI, but it's made to mimic stop motion. All the characters move within the confines of Lego bricks, and everything down to the soap and water is Lego. I love this so much, and it looks so good. I also love how they use tricks with forced perspective, like mini models for shots from further away, and then things like being able to see the string holding up objects is so authentic to brick films. Man, I just freaking love it. Additionally, the texture on the bricks themselves blows my mind. You can see like mold marks, creases, etc. Look, stop motion would have been so sick, but this might actually have been a better route to take. The animation is flawless and holds up super well a decade later. It really is more visually interesting than the majority of recent animated films. This movie looks just incredible. I also want to give a quick shout out to Mark Mothersbaugh, hopefully I'm pronouncing that name right, for the film's score. It's a strange techno mix, it's usually not my jam, but the themes here are really catchy and honestly quite inspiring. I listen to it a lot when I work out. It's pretty awesome stuff and highly underrated. Overall, the Lego Movie is one of my favorite movies ever made. Yeah, I'm biased, and yeah, it is a combination of my two biggest passions, but I think the quality of the motion picture speaks for itself. I'd give the Lego Movie the illustrious rating of 10 out of 10. Before I go, I want to discuss the impact this movie had on pop culture. There is the obvious, like the movie spawning a franchise with 4 movies and a new random brick film about Pharrell Williams on the way, but I also think the movie brought Lego even more into the mainstream. Now, obviously, everyone knows about Lego, but now Lego has become one of the biggest brands in the entire universe. The Lego Movie is definitely a catalyst to that happening. Finally, I also legitimately believe the most popular movies today wouldn't exist without the Lego Movie's success. Do you think a film like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse gets greenlit if the Lego Movie didn't work out? I highly doubt it. The Lego Movie showed what Lord & Miller can do, and Sony was willing to take a risk on them because of its success. I also think a movie like Barbie never gets made if the Lego Movie flops. Warner Brothers believed in Barbie because they saw that a corporate IP film can be artistic and successful in the right hands of an auteur director. This leads them to signing an artist like Greta Gerwig and giving her the keys to do whatever she wants with the brand. No chance that happens if the Lego Movie was a failure. And there you have it. That's the Lego Movie. Did February 7th 10 years ago change the industry? Maybe, maybe not, but it sure did have an impact on me and the community as a whole. The Lego Movie is a masterpiece, and I can't wait to see what happens next in this franchise. And remember, everything is awesome.